presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has held a meeting with his closest challenger in the party's presidential primary, Governor Wike of Rivers State. Atiku is visiting Governor Wike just 48 hours after his victory at the convention. The meeting seeks to reconcile both men and give the PDP a robust outing in the 2023 presidential election against the governing APC. In a tweet after the meeting, Wike said he made a vow to support whoever emerges from the PDP's presidential primaries and will not go back on his word. Meanwhile, Wike has lampooned governors from the southern region for betraying and causing him to lose the presidential ticket of the People's Democratic Party to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Wike, after arriving Port Harcourt yesterday at an event organized to welcome him after the People's Democratic Party primary election, described governors from the south as, quote, betrayers, and he said they will, quote, suffer for their actions in the nearest future. The Rivers State governor's attack against his southern colleagues come a few hours after Atiku paid him a visit at his residence in Abuja.
Fell in what was doing by the entire South. Leave history for those betrayers of their people. History will judge them. They will live and see how betrayers suffer. We have done our best. And the whole world has seen that we have done our best. If I wanted to scuttle this convention, I would have done that. I would have done that. And I told them, some people make it, you go and collect form. Go and collect form and run for president. And let me see how many posts you get. Go and collect form. It's not to talk. Go and collect form. The winner also saw, look, they're underrate us. But now they will not underrate us again. They did not. I told Atiku Abubakar this afternoon when he came to see me. And there's so much people follow you here. You don't have a vote. They're empty. I have vote.
A lot was said.
Yes, he's pointed the finger squarely at the 7 southern PDP governors. He didn't name them. I might. He was talking about, add whoever I miss. Odom Emmanuel, Governor Wike is talking to you. Governor Ikpeazu, Governor Diri, Governor Makinde, I think he's the only one in the Southwest, yes. And who else do we have?
Fayose.
Well, former Governor Fayose.
Former Governor Fayose.
He's talking about the PDP southern governors.
The two main people, Obaseki Adukowa,
who are also now being considered, as, at least according to this day's analysis, for the VP slot. But I do wonder if Governor Wike has been considered for the VP slot, because it did look, there was quite a pleasant photo up there with former President Atiku Abubakar having, extended the olive branch, trying to smooth any ruffled feathers, and you had former Governor Fayose, who was also one of the aspirants, also in that photo op. So it's looking like PDP is trying to present a united front. That's to be expected. We really did not see a lot of evidence of rancor. Obviously, there are hurt feelings, and Governor Wike has expressed a sense of betrayal, but it's not going to stop him from supporting the party. I think whatever personal grievances that he has, he'll find a way of, dealing with that, but he's not going to now turn around and abandon the party or sabotage the party. And I'm sure the party is relieved by that. But the issues still remain that the South did not have the outing that a lot of people had expected. Right at the beginning of this entire political process, it was assumed that this is the turn of the South, and it's shaping up to be quite the opposite, isn't it?
Dr. Abati?
Well, first, look, yesterday we were discussing former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's 5 agenda, what he calls my covenant with Nigeria. The first item on that, agenda list is to forge unity in diversity. And part of it was to ensure unity within the party. The second item is to ensure good governance and promote the cause of democracy. I think it shows, that very early in the day, he had recognized the fact that the way the convention went, that there was division within the party. And it was just as appropriate that he went straight to see the runner-up, as it were, in that primary, to try to assure him of solidarity, to extend, a hand of friendship and all of that. Because now that he's the candidate of the party, it goes without saying, it's a no-brainer, that he's now the leader of the party. And he will need votes from everywhere. Even if we make the point about how, there were primordial sentiments, it was Tambuwa stepped down, a meeting was held up till 2 a.m. where it was decided that the North should come together. All of that is now immaterial to him as the candidate. As a flag bearer of the party, he needs the votes in every state, in every corner of Nigeria. And he will need all the party leaders, even the ones at the local government level, to go out into this process as a united home front. That is the only way that the party can beat the APC at the election. Now, in 2015, what was the problem? The party was divided. There were grievances. People collected money and they did not deliver. Atiku Abubakar running for the 6th time for the presidency of Nigeria, we need all hands on board. So as a strategy, it was good that he went to an outspoken, aggressive campaigner, an aspirant as he then was, like Nyesom Wike. The second thing, of course, is that even beyond the feel-good factor, we are all working together. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, we need cash, loads of financial resources. And within the PDP, it is well known that, look, yeah, there are some governors who have resources, but they don't have the courage to spend it. But Nyesom Wike, since the party lost the election in 2015 and again 2019, has been, a keeper of a war chest. People have all kinds of feelings about that. They say, oh, it is state money. He says it is not River State money. Okay, but at least he's one man who has shown the courage to help sustain the party. So despite the fact that he lost by over 100 votes to Atiku Abubakar, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar himself, being a founding father of the party, will know where the strength lies. And so going to meet with Nyesom Wike is in order. And it's also a way of showing good sportsmanship. It's also a way of recognizing that Nyesom Wike, whatever may be his weaknesses, well-advertised weaknesses, his weaknesses even made the front page, he's still a very loyal party member. Now, to Nyesom Wike himself and his reaction, after the meeting with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, he returned to Port Harcourt, where he was given a rousing welcome. And, he was then making his speech, and he made a point. And I think that there are some key points. One, he accused Southern governors in the PDP of betrayal. He said there was an agreement, and that he went into that race on the basis of principle to defend the interests of the South. Now he didn't make it. He came back with 237 votes, and he felt that he got those votes because he was betrayed. At the back of his mind, he probably thought that if all the southern states voted for him with the efforts he had made in the North, and indeed ahead of the convention, it looked like he was going on a home run. Okay, so he felt that he was betrayed by his own people. He probably is not disclosing the full details. Maybe there were some southern governors, southern leaders who even attended the party that the northern elders summoned, and they decided to change their mind at the last minute. Well, we will get to know the details in the fullness of time. The second point he also made is that he remains a party man, that he had made the promise that whoever wins, he will remain in the party and he will work for the party. And I think that that is commendable. That shows loyalty on his part. Projecting that is also in order. And those who criticize him will probably take a special note of that. Third, he said he told the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar when he visited him that all the people surrounding him, that they have no votes. Paper tigers, he didn't use that phrase, but he said these people, cannot give you any votes. But he and the people of Rivers State, they have substantial votes. And he cited the fact that Lagos, Kano, and Rivers have the numbers. Yes, in politics, numbers matter. Well, if we deconstruct that, maybe Rivers is not necessarily number 3 in terms of the number of votes. But it's good for him to engage in self-congratulation, self-promotion. But what I take away from that is that he's more or less saying he's guaranteeing the PDP candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the votes of Rivers State. Well, is he in a position to dictate how the people of Rivers State will vote? I don't think so. But what he's saying simply is that he will work for the candidate of the party. And I think that, that is useful. So far, as of this moment, it's good that he's in good spirits, that he's not despondent. And I hope that he was not just staging a drama for the camera and saying the right things. But at least on the surface of what he has said, we can go to town with the fact that he has assured Alhaji Atiku Abubakar of his support and that he will not do anti-party. And that his promise previously that he will work to get the APC out of power will be something that he truly believes in. As for whether he would emerge as a vice presidential candidate or running mate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, that's still in the air. Because he was also quoted as saying that he does not plan to be a second fiddle to anybody. But on the basis of what he has said so far, if Alhaji Atiku Abubakar gets there, I'm sure that Wike has been able to protect his relevance within the party. He will certainly remain relevant.
I mean, one thing about Wike is the fact that definitely he will remain relevant to the party for a long time. Since he came on stream, when he became governor, he had always had this level of relevance. And he's just one of those politicians that when a lot of people were leaving, when the heist was happening with the PDP, when people were leaving, he stayed behind. And he pumped money into building the party. We can't take that away from him. Another thing he said about the votes, yes, we can't take that away from him. In fact, I call him the 1 million man. Rivers might not be top on the pecking order of the states that give you a lot of votes, but Wike will grind out close to 1 million votes. I think he did it in 2015. I'm trying to check the exact data of the vote he crunched out in 2019. I just want to get the data out to be precise. Rivers State. Because when you even look at it, even if he couldn't crunch out that numbers in 2019, it will have been just a very, very narrow window why things didn't pan out for him. Okay, in 2019, he couldn't get that huge swell of numbers. He just got 400,000 votes. But we know that the Rivers election in 2019 was a fight to finish. The violence and everything, even the governorship elections was, up in the air for quite a while. So in 2019, he did 400,000 votes. 2015, he did over 1 million votes. He has that pattern. He says he can bring out the numbers. Another thing we have to say is, there's that talk about betrayal. And it's not only Wike that feels that way. A lot of people from the South feel that way. And that's why when Chief Ayade was interviewed, he said, let's go back to the former constitution we had, the regional constitution, before elections. And you see, I don't know what will happen. I'm not a seer. But definitely it's going to be a tough balancing act for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Because that zeitgeist of justice, of power coming to the South, we're already one leg into power going to the North now. And a lot of people don't like it. And it looks very bad. It looks very untidy for democracy. Forget any notion that, the North knows how to play politics, the South does not know how to come together. But it's a very bad outlook that after 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, we'll have another president from the North emerge. It doesn't speak well for the unity of this country. Let's not deceive ourselves, except we want to deceive ourselves. So those are the factors we are looking at critically. And that's why the likes of Wike is complaining. Ohaneze Ndigbo too was complaining bitterly about it. But there was another counter statement released by Ohaneze Ndigbo So saying they didn't say all the vitriolics. That message was out yesterday. But we are all waiting to see where the APC will go. If the APC decides to go north, a lot of people feel disgruntled. But most importantly, whoever emerges in 2023 has a tough job. It has to unify the country because the country is divided. Nigeria's, we have to move to the next story now. Nigeria's ruling All Progressive Congress has begun screening of its 23 presidential aspirants. Present on the first day were Emeka Nwajuba, Dave Omahi, Felix Nicholas, Senator Ebikuli Amosu Abubakar Badaru, Senator Ajayi Boroface, Ken Nnamani, Mrs. Uju Ken Ohaneye, Rotimi Amechi, Danny Yerima, and Senator Bola Tinubu. While the presidential aspirants to be screened today are Professor Ben Ayade, Hamed Lawan, Yemi Osinbajo, Yahaya Bello, Mr. Twin Jack Rich, Dr. Ugbonaya Onu, Chief Ike Obasi, Mokelu, Honorable Dimeji Bankole, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Godswill Akpabio, Senator Rochas Okorocha. Okorocha is, however, currently in detention of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. All right? So there's a short clip of Bola Ahmed Tinubu during his screening by the APC panel. Here he talks about the national development and he touts his past contribution to Nigeria's economic growth. Let's take a look at it.
Let's go for that.
Yes,
was short for.
If you treat, there are three highways in potential development of a nation. If you have gas assets, submarine gas line, or submarine vessels that will pass the region, your transmission, electricity transmission is an highway.
That's what the problem we still have.
And you remember that I brought Aaron to this country.
Yes.
Electricity.
Okay, talk to Aaron. What you are about
telecommunication that is success in Nigeria today. I brought Econet. Econet is now Airtel.
Yes.
I've helped them to flip on the 5G now. The option that they have 5G. We started it. Nigeria is rich.
It is.
Let's talk about that. It's just thinking and doing. And the essence of our livelihood must be placed on long-term, medium-term, short-term values. Create values for us. You know, and if you bring commodity exchange, establish it, and it was the first topic of my birthday colloquium when we started this agency. I brought people to make presentation to the federal government. Secondary, primary, seeding.
A lot to talk about, Tundu.
Yes, it all looks all rather amicable, that screening panel there. I'm sure you've heard that there were some anxieties being expressed by some people that in the past there was no love lost between the first APC national chairman, Chief John Odige Oyegun, and Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. But from what we saw there, it's all very, personable, this screening. It doesn't look like they're really being dragged over hot coals. It looks like quite a nice, friendly, convivial atmosphere where the aspirants get to talk about, from what we saw there, what they've actually, achieved and how they've contributed to national development. Tinubu there was talking about Enron, with regards to power, when he was Lagos State Governor, and Econet, which is now Airtel. But I do wonder, and I do hope, because what I had expected, and I'm sure what the general public does expect from a screening committee, is an in-depth probe, similar to a job interview. I do hope that, really thorough detail is, requested from the aspirants of the APC. I hope that it's not some kind of a rubber stamp, just come through, blab, and leave.
Take
I
a
hope
bow.
it's really, exactly. You know, that take a bow is always a problem for me, right? I hope the CV is, you know, analyzed methodically with a fine-tooth comb, every aspect of it, education, achievements, as we've heard now, future plans for the country. I do hope that we actually, you know, get to see more of that. It's a shame that that screening process is not public. I'm sure we would have all been really interested to see exactly what each aspirant said.
Okay, there have been some details out there in the public domain. Some newspapers this morning have published some of the questions that the aspirants were asked. We were told they were asked about 10 questions. 1, what is your manifesto? 2, are you going to be loyal to the party? Are you going to abide by the decision of the party? Do you have dual citizenship? Although that is a settled matter. When it came up in 2019 in an Ondo State Election Tribunal, or was it 2019, and the Court of Appeal ruled that it's not an issue. Although in some other jurisdictions, it's an issue if you have, you know, dual citizenship, because your oath of allegiance as a man seeking presidential office must be to that country. Now, one other question that they were asked is, have you been convicted before? Are you under investigation by the ICPC or the EFCC? Have you ever been bankrupt? So in other words, all the persons that appeared before the APC presidential screening panel yesterday were asked more or less the same questions, because some of them reportedly spoke to journalists without, direct attribution. But okay, as for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think the big issue around him was the fact that the panel of 7 that is screening the candidates received a petition from a Kano APC member, one Sagil Iyale, who was saying in a letter written May 17th to the chairman of the party that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should be disqualified on the grounds of his academic qualification. The person raised the question about University of Chicago, which, is it Chicago State University, which Asiwaju purportedly attended between 1972 to 1976. Now, this was an issue that came up way back, I think in 1998, 1999, ahead of the period when Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu became governor of Lagos State. But, well, I think the major referent this time should be what he filled in his form, because they all filled forms, the nomination form. They were expected to supply their, certificates and all of that. So, going back to the past, I don't think it will be of any effect in this regard. In any case, Section 131 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999, is very clear. Hearing some noise. Yeah, okay, can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Now, Section 131 of the 1999 Constitution is very specific about the grounds on which you can be qualified for the position of president. 35 years of age, you should never have been convicted. You should, quite a long list there.
Yeah.
That is what matters. And with regard to qualification, that section 131 says you must have a school certificate or its equivalent. That same constitution, later in the interpretation section, says that in fact, if you attended 2 or 3 seminars abroad, you can be a president of Nigeria. You don't even need to pass the school SAT. The constitution did not say you must pass school SAT exam. You can have F9 parallel and be president of
as long as
of Nigeria. And in fact, if you are just able to speak English, communicate in the lingua franca, and assessing all of this can say that you are qualified to be president. So I don't think that there's any heavy weather to be made this time around out of Asiwaju's qualification, except he had submitted, or he claims this time around that he attended Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge. And then, his critics can now come around and say, which university? This and that. The other issue that the man raised was about his identity. Okay? Say, what is his identity? But these were not issues before the panel, the screening panel, as you saw yesterday. Yeah. But I imagine a situation whereby the APC will just clear everybody because they were asked, the aspirants were asked the question, will you accept a consensus candidacy in the event that the party decides on consensus? Are you ready to step down? Well, I wasn't at the screening panel. I would not know what answers
but
the aspirants
can I just say, the one female aspirant, she did say that she said she was ready to step down as long as they follow her economic blueprint. Okay. But I also wanted to add that why I'm particular about probing questions is APC's experience with David Lyon. Remember that in Bielsa?
Yes, yes.
That was, they should have learned a lesson from that.
I think the screening is a charade. It's a pantomime. This is not a screening. It's a tea party. It's a conversation over tea. I mean, political parties in Nigeria should do better. For the position of the president of this country, you just ask people 10 questions.
Not okay.
Will I tell you if I'm under investigation?
Not okay.
What happens to background check? Somebody will have thought part of the 100 million, and maybe going forward, if the APC can learn from this, people should have submitted all their credentials necessary for screening way beforehand. Then you take time, employ background check companies in this country to background check all their credentials. It is based on that report, then you call them in for an oral interview. If you really want to do a screening. If you want to get a job, they do background check on you now, isn't it? So why can't they do background check on people? If you sit me on the screening panel and you ask me, have I been convicted before? You think I'm screening?
No.
I will tell you I've been convicted before. I will say no now. If you ask me, am I under investigation? What will I say? I will say no. I will say I'm the best thing that happens since sliced bread. I will say I'm the best ever. So it's not screening they are conducting. This is why we are just joking in this country. We take the role of president in this country as a joke. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we have Rotu Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Adesu Amora, and Aaron Akirina to give updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning.
Good morning. Very good morning to you. A lot to think about, actually, as far as the markets are concerned. Fairly mixed trade. Let me just go through the main headlines for you as far as Asia markets are concerned. Chinese PMI came in at 49.6. That's a slight improvement on April's 47.5, but it still shows that it's still below that 50-point thing mark that separates growth from contraction. I'll come on to the detail of this. European leaders agreed on fresh sanctions against Russia oil after the invasion of Ukraine. That cut back about 90% of imports of Russian oil to Europe. As far as China's concerned, is the worst of COVID over? Shanghai is reopening tomorrow, effectively. Beijing still. There's a lot of tax breaks, huge positive. A lot of engines, a lot of fuel for this engine of worldwide economic growth. So people are relatively pleased about that, quite honestly, as far as despite the fact that that PMI didn't quite breach the 50% level. Is there a global recession coming? Well, according to leading economists, not yet. But stagflation, that's, high prices, low growth, will probably continue for the simple reason, the simple reasons we've been talking about, basically. You don't need me to tell you any more than that. But apparently, according to leading economists, this is going to last for about the next 12 months. US recap. Remember Memorial Day yesterday, so they're just coming back now to their 4-day week. S&P futures up, Dow Jones futures up very, very slightly indeed. The big question is really whether this is a bottom for stocks or not. The Dow is 10.1%, its 52-week high, and so on. Traders will look through quarterly earnings this holiday shortened week, of course, but we've got Salesforce, Hewlett-Packard, HP, and Victoria's Secret coming out today, which will give us an idea on retail and also the way people are buying PCs and all the rest of it. Now, back to the EU then. So it's agreed this compromise deal. If you remember, Hungary was standing in the way of it. And because obviously Viktor Orban has been on relatively friendly terms with Vladimir Putin over the years, it's the sixth package of sanctions. It is only going to affect well, it's going to affect everything apart from those countries which are feeding off Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Hungary from the southern leg of the pipeline, which they get all their oil from that, so they're not really being affected. So it is a compromise, quite honestly, but it's pushing the oil price up, as I said earlier. EU's going into record territory, no question, as far as inflation's concerned, no question about that. CPI pushed a record high of 7.5% in April. Will it mean an interest rate rise? Almost certainly in July, 25%. 25 basis points, a 0.25% rate hike in response to that in July. As far as the UK is concerned, two major American banks have been talking about a grim outlook for sterling, grim outlook for the pound because of stubbornly high inflation. And again, all the other things we've been talking about, economic slowdown as well. Now, some dealers in London are feeling this is rather overstating the case, but we are an economy which imports a lot. And naturally, that has an effect on prices because the pound is weaker, the obvious imports are more expensive. One of the leading clothes stores in this country, Primark. Now, again, what does that matter? Well, I mentioned that what's happening is that their CEO is regretting the fact that prices have got to rise. Now, again, I'm only quoting this because not that anyone's really interested in Primark. I mean, it's a very, very popular shop on London's Oxford Street and other big shopping streets as well. The fact of it is, though, I think this is going to be the beginning of retailers like this actually saying, look, we're really sorry, there's nothing we can do about rising prices. So, finally, that European ban on Russian oil, it sends oil slightly higher this morning. It started at about 121 and it's now about 123. So it's getting into this sort of very volatile territory. It's continuing to rise. There isn't going to be any relief from that. Nobody knows what the price is going to be. Suffice it to say, it is unfortunately volatile. That's bad news, basically.
Really bad news, getting volatile. But the question is, why does Boris Johnson keep blaming everything, even the power cuts in the UK now, on Russia, when the UK fails to invest in renewable energy over the years? I mean, the targets are backwards. The energy companies, they were not incentivized properly. So why is everything now being blamed on Russia? Russia's got nothing to do with the energy crisis in the UK. It's just bad leadership. Let's call it what it is. That's one. Number two, another new round of sanctions were talked about. But I think the West is just dilly-dallying with Russia. Really. Nothing has been done with those sanctions. The ruble keeps gaining so high that now interest rates are going down in Russia. That's amazing. During a war, interest rates go down because the ruble is on an all-time high. It's having a great time. And the West says there's a lot of sanctions going on. What's happening really?
Okay, as far as the ruble's concerned, don't get fooled by where the ruble is right now. That is completely due to the internal manipulation by the very, very canny central bank manager. She's doing a great job at the moment. There's no question about that. But the fact is that they're not having to buy foreign currencies, and that's helping strengthen the ruble. What we are seeing is that the public and the retail shortages are now beginning to bite in Russia. So I think it's very, very early days. I mean, you could say the same about wheat. It's sitting on a load of wheat, but it's got to sell it somewhere. Now, it may be selling it to countries like China and India who have no scruples about buying from this particular country. That's really up to them. That's what markets are all about, really. As far as Boris Johnson's concerned, yes, I mean, I had a power cut, as you know, yesterday. I jokingly blamed it on the Russians. Nothing to do with that. I think it was a swapping over of power. It happens very occasionally in this country, and particularly in the region that I live in. I think that what politicians are doing, quite rightly, is saying, look, there's very little we can do about this. They can pull some levers, they can give some incentive. When you say incentivization, when you say energy companies, if you mean the oil and gas companies, I don't think they will say a lot about this. But remember what they were saying before the windfall tax is actually they would continue to invest in the UK because they're going to have to do that. Energy climate targets, I think not many people are talking about those right now because of the obvious things. It's like in a very prosperous country, people can afford to be vegetarians. Well, if you're in a poor country, you eat what you're given. It's as simple as that, really. So we'll have to see. I mean, I think they're all clinging on by their fingernails, basically. But the fact is, unfortunately, I don't know what your system's like, but here it doesn't matter. At the moment, it doesn't really matter which party is in power. There are big geopolitical changes happening, and we have to cope with that somehow. It will mean higher prices, no question.
Well, Michael, two quick things. Britain is beginning to look like Africa. Very familiar developments. We're told by the start of next year, about 6 million households will be without power supply, regular power supply. We know that. We are used to it. Okay, but to think that will happen in Britain is quite interesting. And then secondly, there's also chaos at the airports as people try to go for half-time holidays. People waiting on queues for up to 8 hours, and then, the flights are cancelled. The people are blaming the government. They say government has failed. The government is blaming the airlines for not making good use of the aid that they received at the height of the pandemic. Oh, that's also very familiar here in Africa. So in fact, here in Africa, we sleep at the airports sometimes to be able to catch a flight. So who do we blame here? Is it the people, saying the UK government has failed? Or is it the airlines themselves that government is accusing of not making good use of the follow scheme? That's one. Second, Elon Musk is saying that recession is a good thing because according to him, there are many companies that are not adding any value and they've just been having money raining down on them. Well, I don't know how much of economics Elon Musk says, but his voice carries some weight. So is it true that recession will teach businesses some lessons about economics, or is Elon Musk just being arrogant? Particularly as economists have said, even the interest rates that have gone up, 60 countries have increased interest rates in the first quarter of this year. But the analysts are saying that's even low by historical standards, and we should all tighten our belts for more difficult times ahead. So maybe that's what Elon Musk is reflecting. What do you think?
What I think about Elon Musk, I basically, he can say what he likes. I mean, he is the richest person in the world, but I don't think that many central banks and the ones that really matter, and politicians actually, listen and take seriously what he says. If he's saying that recession is a good sorter out of markets, he's not wrong there. Certainly, recession is. It'll separate the weak from the strong, and certainly a lot of companies have been given a lot of government help, as they have certainly in the UK. And the United States, but as a person, he may be shifting headlines because he talks a lot on Twitter. That what he says, I mean, yeah, okay, fine. If that's his view, that's his view. I don't take it any more seriously than you do, quite honestly. As far as your other point was Boris Johnson and the economy.
Yes.
Payoff. That's right. Yeah. Well, everybody's blaming everybody else. I mean, the airlines are saying, look, how could we possibly plan for this? Because you lift lockdowns and then you brought them back on again, and now you've lifted them again. The airlines have laid off staff. We've been covering this story, haven't we? They're trying to get them back again. The staff at the airports are trying to get back too. And it's half term and people are going abroad. That's what they want to do. They want to take the kids away to the sunshine. Well, good luck to them. Some of us are going to be stuck here working, and that seems a sensible thing to do. I think we certainly face. Remember, we are a very, very, very small economy. We always tend to punch above our weight, but we're very small. And as I said earlier, the fact that sterling, it looks like it's going to be weakened, is not going to help the whole country with imports as well. So yes, it doesn't look very nice right now. No, you're right.
Right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. I wanted to ask you about imperial measurements and their practical purpose, if any at all. But alas, we've run out of time, perhaps tomorrow. Now, our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. And good morning, Rufai. The IMF released its regional outlook for sub-Saharan Africa. We can take a look at some updates. Start, of course, with the wider region first with respect to the growth outlooks and the risks that the region is. And this was actually released in Abuja yesterday. Our very own Oyin Sunday was on hand for that. So they're estimating that 2021 sub-Saharan African growth 4.5%, revised upwards from 3.7% based on the recovery from the COVID pandemic. Yeah, partial recovery. They've now revised downwards that growth for this year to 3.8% as a result of the threats that are being faced at the bottom of the screen there: Russia, Ukraine, inflation, and debt. They did say, of course, 2023, the outlook could be 4.4%. Now, remember, as you know, I love when Michael Wilson talks about these updates. They're just updates, and they could be revised at any time based on how situations change. To Nigeria, they're saying that Nigeria could spend as much as 6 trillion naira in fuel subsidies this year, spending on average of 500 billion naira a month. Estimating growth at 2022 to be about 3.4%, pretty much what we had for last year. They're estimating that debt service to revenue by 2026, which would be 3 years into whoever becomes president next year, will be 100% at the rates that we're going. And I have to tell you, whoever, again, all the biggest guests come on this platform, on this show, morning show, please ask them what they're going to do, or whoever is coming into office is going to do about debts, because that is just a huge, huge elephant that is just staring in the face of whoever comes into office. And their plans to trim that debt. Threats, vaccination rates, let's not forget, COVID is still there, Russia, Ukraine, inflation, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, this is what we're just talking about, forecasting 6 trillion naira in fuel subsidies for Nigeria. We go to Kenya. Kenya surprised the markets. Well, was it really a surprise? I mean, no one predicted it would happen yesterday, but Kenya essentially hiked their benchmark interest rate to 7.5%. It's the first increase since July of 2015, first rate hike in about, 7 years. Inflation, 6.5% in April. The Central Bank of Kenya's target band is between 2.5% to 7.5%. There's an election coming, well, today is the end of May, right? So 2 months, essentially, elections in August. Yeah, is it wise to be raising rates and increasing the cost of borrowing now? Perhaps it was a very prudent decision because, again, like everybody else across the world, they have said that inflation is the reason why. But at least Kenya is above the curve. 7.5% rates, inflation 6.5%. I think South Africa is ahead, Egypt, so on. But Ghana and Nigeria, unfortunately, their rates are still behind the curve. Finally, Ethiopia. This kind of ties into what the IMF outlook was talking about as far as the risks that different sub-Saharan countries are facing. Ethiopia is considering fertilizer subsidies for agriculture. Why? You know why? Because of the war and because fertilizer costs have spiked. But again, for every single country that considers paying subsidies, you are essentially adding more to your fiscal burden, and you don't know how much longer this war is going to last. So it's a really tough balancing act that, Tundu, you were mentioning yesterday.
Thank you, Rotis. But the thing is, what do? Devil deep blue sea upside. You're going to look at mass starvation, right, which we are actually facing here in Nigeria, 15 million households. But I want you to repeat, just for me to hear, once again, 100% of revenue
going to debts by 2026, that the rates at which we're going.
That is staggering.
It is.
I mean, I read a rebuttal by Ben Akabwe. He said, no, right now we're not paying 80%, we're actually paying 76%.
Okay, which is just 4% away from the 80%.
I don't think it's just so grim. But I know the answer to the questions, which we will ask. Thank you for that point. We will ask all the aspirants when we get the chance to do so. But I know the answer is going to be, we're going to increase revenues.
Revenues will go up.
And we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The thing is that we have a surfeit of plans to raise revenue. We always have done. The issue is executing those plans. Right. That is the problem. And we are looking really in the face of mass poverty. We are already the poverty capital of the world. This is staggeringly scary at this point.
Actually, we topped India. We kind of climbed ahead.
We beat India. And look at oil prices right now, a record
Record high.
Sorry, I got that backwards. India is now number 1, but it's just so we fell. So we're number 2 now. But I know.
But thank God for that.
But when you look at even our being number 2, equate you to the Indian population.
Thank you. So
That's
40%
another
of
one.
us.
So there's no population parity as regards that because
Right.
India is way up into the billions in population.
Right.
But we are
1.3 billion.
well,
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
We're 200 million.
but it has to be
We're
said,
too old.
this is also Africa's finest hour. The war.
Are you
in
sounding like
Ukraine.
Elon Musk,
No,
saying
no.
recession is not bad and
No.
we should? Okay.
I don't
All
smoke
right.
weed.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Moving on.
Go ahead.
So this is this is
Go ahead. Reply.
this is Africa's finest hour.
Okay.
You know why? I
Why?
say that?
Why?
That's Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Because this is the time to innovate, and we have what it is. So I think government of African countries now should key into what the African Development Bank is doing as regards improved varieties for wheat.
Okay.
So there are actually varieties that can grow in sub-Saharan Africa that doesn't have to grow in temperate region of the world.
Okay.
How can we bolster that? How can we plant a lot of that? How can we show up our potential? Because we've got green land. We've got a lot of land to plant. Take, for instance, the Ukraine that is producing over 26% or 20% of the wheat consumed in the world don't have the equal volume of arable land we have in this country. We have over 80 million hectares of arable land, way more than Ukraine. Nigeria is spread across 923,000 square kilometers of land. Ukraine is over 600,000 square kilometers of land. But the question is, have we been able to maximize agriculture and maximize the value chain? No.
Their farmers go to their farms without getting shot.
Sure.
Right, right.
And that's why we need to fix our own internal problems. Because too much of the internal problems are ruining us. So if they're subsidizing fertilizers in Ethiopia, it's a good sign. But the question is, can we ramp up production? Because yield per hectare is another problem.
It's like this.
It's so small.
Yield per hectare for our
But it
viewers.
could be our finest hour if we buckle up.
We've had 2 recessions, or we've had finest
Let me
hours.
start,
Okay, go ahead.
Go
Doctor.
just with Kenya.
Yeah. Kenya. All right.
You know, Kenya is just following the global example. 60 countries so far this year, in the last few months, have increased interest rates. As I was telling Mr. Wilson earlier on, even the economists are saying, going by historical standards, the rates are relatively low.
Yeah.
And that we are likely to have more interest rates hikes. And when we have that, many countries, including the top 10 countries in the world, will slide into recession. So how do countries deal with that? Now in Kenya, like Nigeria, Kenya has been taking an accommodative stance. And now Kenya, like Nigeria and Ghana, has followed the global trend. 50 basis points rate hike in what they call the central bank rate.
Yes.
They don't call it MPR, they call it CBR in Kenya. But maybe down the line, they may be forced by global trends to further increase the rates. And what they too are blaming is global supply disruptions and also the war in Ukraine. I guess very soon, you know, everybody would not be talking about Ukraine. They will replace it with Putin.
Right.
You know, that Putin is the problem of the world. Yes.
The aggressor.
But to come back to Nigeria, you see, everything that Ari Eisen, that's the name of the IMF representatives, would seem to make sense. That is food insecurity. Well, it's a global problem. 80 million people, he said, in Nigeria have a problem with food. And we saw a practical illustration of this in Port Harcourt at the Polo grounds the other day, when over 30 persons died because they wanted to go and collect free food from the King's ministry. They were asked to come at 10 a.m. By 5 a.m., the place was besieged. And when the doors were opened, there was a rush. So there is hunger everywhere in Nigeria. Since Operation Feed the Nation, during Obasanjo's first coming as head of state, Nigeria has been talking about agriculture, the need for agriculture. We are still there today. So we can't blame everything on Ukraine. We blame everything, in our own case, on the failure of leadership, the failure of vision, and petrodollar, the cost of oil. Everybody is going to Abuja every month to go and collect money. Now NNPC is even saying there is no money again.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
people will
So
let know.
that's part
So
of the
now
problem.
what?
The second thing the gentleman said that stood out was the fact that, look, by the end of this year, Nigeria will be paying up to 6 trillion naira.
Staggering.
The National Assembly the other day approved 4.7 trillion for subsidy okay, for a period of 18 months. Now we are being told it's 6 trillion that we will have. And he said it is an existential problem for Nigeria.
Yeah.
I like that phrase, an existential problem, because if we're going to be using 100% of revenue to pay debt to revenue to debt service ratio, then of course it is an existential crisis. And we're likely to harvest that in terms of more violence, more deaths, more crime in this country. And that is why you are absolutely correct. You cannot be more correct in saying that anytime we have a presidential aspirant in this space, we should ask the person, what are you going to do about this existential crisis that Nigeria faces? Don't blame Putin. Don't blame Ukraine.
Right.
What will you do about it? So you cannot be more correct, Rutus.
Thank you, Rutus.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
For an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omorowan is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Tunu. Great to see you again. Good morning, Rufai, and good morning, Dr. Batty.
Good morning, Queen.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, nearly 15 million people have, 15 million more people have died from the first 2 years of the pandemic than would have been expected during normal times. And that's the excess death calculation by the World Health Organization, even though the Johns Hopkins University tally that should appear on your screen anytime from now, still saying 6.2 million deaths. Over 525 million infections have been recorded. We also know that at least 11.3 billion vaccine doses have been administered across countries and territories of the world, and that's including more than 1.5 billion boosters or additional doses across the world. Well, in Nigeria, the health authorities have released the latest epidemiological report for the pandemic, and that's for the 9th to the 22nd of May this year. It shows a decrease in testing to a little over 28,000 from 43,421 reported in the previous week. Meanwhile, positive cases in this period increased by 0.6% in 11 states and the Federal Capital Territory. However, no deaths were recorded in Nigeria. When it came to inbound travelers for this period, 988 people were tested, of which 12 came back positive. And for the outbound travelers, people leaving the country, 3,104 of them were tested, 18 of them tested positive. Now, let's look at the vaccination rate against COVID-19 in Nigeria so far. At the moment, Nigeria has fully vaccinated 16% of its targeted eligible population. And for those that are partially vaccinated, those who have received one shot of the available 2-dose regimen of vaccines, the country has done 23.9% at the moment. Let's go to a report that has just been released by the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And this new report on the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa suggests that the window of opportunity to vaccinate Africans before the 5th wave has now closed, and that the 5th wave will spread to as many as unvaccinated as they were during the 4th wave. The Tony Blair Institute says since the 4th wave, the continent's vaccination rate has only inched up from 10% to 17%. It also says only 7 countries have coverage rates above 40%, while Central and Western Africa have made the least vaccination progress since the 4th wave. It also acknowledges that the vaccines are available on the continent, but they are not getting into arms. So if you see the data on your screen, it makes a comparison between vaccination rates during the 4th wave and vaccination during the 5th wave. Of course, we know South Africa, started that 5th wave when we saw those cases, and with the emerging Omicron subvariants from the country. Again, the Tony Blair Institute also acknowledges the role played by South Africa in detecting variants early, and it's also praising the country for that. Very quickly, finally this morning, let's go to North Korea, where the country has reported a slight increase in suspected COVID-19 cases on Monday, amid media reports that the movement restrictions imposed in the capital, Pyongyang, has now been lifted. The Korean Central News Agency, which is the state news broadcast agency, said 100,710 people developed fever symptoms during the 24-hour period ending 6 p.m. on Sunday. The tally is the first time North Korea's number of suspected COVID-19 cases has risen back above 100,000 in 3 days. And it brings the total number of cases reported since late April to more than 3.55 million. However, let me also mention that a few hours ago, the state media has released new figures for Tuesday. It says 96,020 more people showed fever symptoms and no additional deaths. You will recall that North Korea has refused to call these cases COVID-19 cases. It's referring to them as fever cases. Back to you guys.
Okay, let's start with North Korea. North Korea is a closed society. And one major challenge that we face with North Korea is that whatever statistics is offered by the government, is unreliable, can be doubted, because the concern is that, the total number of cases may even be in the excess of 200,000 cases per day. Now, the WHO, the UK, the United States have offered to help and make vaccines available. But North Korea, Kim Jong-un, who is the leader, is treating this as, part of the politics with the West. And he has refused outside help. And in North Korea, the health infrastructure there is underdeveloped. There's gross poverty, there is poor governance. So it's quite curious that, look, all of this global health crisis will be reduced to the level of politics by the government of North Korea. North Korea had approached China for help. China just by the border, aligned with North Korea. But I don't know what the update is with regard to the help from China. Now in Shanghai, which is another major story coming out, fences have been pulled down. The people, they say the government is trying to ease restrictions in low-risk areas, but restaurants will remain closed, bars will remain closed, and the residents will still be required to take the test, COVID test, every 72 hours. The government has also announced in Shanghai, with a population of 25 million, incentives for businesses that close down. You recall that at the height of the infections in Shanghai, China's probably most industrial center, many businesses withdrew. But now incentives will be given, tax rebates, support for small and medium-scale enterprises. But this does not in any way translate into the abandonment by the Chinese state of the zero-COVID policy that has been severely criticized in the West. And with regard to China, in terms of the numbers, in the affected over 200 cities, there's also suspicion that China is not transparent enough. As for the point you made about the Tony Blair Institute report, well, I hope African leaders will study that report. Many countries of the world are relaxing, they are opening up, trying to live with COVID. Well, but in Africa, there's a lot of uncertainty. Those Western countries, they have certain advantages. They have a huge stock of vaccines, right? And they have, the facilities to be able to administer very
therapeutics.
Quickly. Yeah, but in Africa, we are far behind the rate of the wave. That is the problem we face. And we have issues also with vaccine hesitancies. So the issue is Africa is grossly vulnerable. And that should be the main message from that Tony Blair Institute. So there should be more country-centered efforts. In Ghana, they have a 2.5 million within 7 days project. In Nigeria, here, the government announced a mass vaccination program. But to what extent, are African countries able to pursue that? And if you look at the table that you showed, Central Africa and West Africa are most affected in terms of addressing the challenges from the 4th wave to the 5th wave.